Hmm.
Welcome.
Come in. It's great.
Hmm.
Carolyn, even Carolyn's here. Oh, fabulous.
Stephanie and Jill. All kinds of folks. Hmm.
So as you're coming in for today, while we're waiting for everybody to land, if you wouldn't mind putting in the chat box, maybe a word or two about what intrigues you about stillness. What are you noticing about stillness in your own life? The ever so wonderful Karen will let us know kind of what's coming up there.
Good and scary. Scary. Yeah, I get that.
It's scary.
Important, challenging. Brings clarity. My mind races most of the time, so no comment about stillness at all there. I love that.
If one person's honest.
Yes, at least one. Time to find insight, indeterminacy, reflection. Can feel myself breathe, peaceful. Someone just actually took time off for the very purpose of being still, and it was renewing. It perhaps is a luxury, someone said. Someone said, what stillness? Betty, what stillness? Once again, clearing, smiling, energy.
Right. Thank you, Karen. And so welcome to everybody. I'll put we've got a few slides for today, but I'll put those up in a minute. But I just wanted to welcome, particularly those of you for whom this is new, like maybe this is your first one to come visit us. So in many ways, though, I've sort of moved through much of my early life as a mild-mannered person. I never was very comfortable being told what to do or what box I should be in or how things should be. And I grew up with a strong aversion to sort of cliches and sort of simplistic ways of thinking about things. And so I sort of set sail with narrative coaching about 20 some odd years ago out of my PhD, in part to create a space for a different way of thinking about coaching, a different way of thinking about human conversation. And I've sort of spent much of my career sort of beyond coaching, if you will, always imagining based on a strong value of integrity and respect for the human being in front of us. And that a lot of our labels and conveniences about how we practice, which were more comfortable for us or more familiar to us, often made it more challenging for our clients because they had other needs from us. And so we decided to have this series of these once a month conversations in this sort of space out beyond coaching. It's inclusive of coaching, but not limited to coaching. And one of the sort of the theme we've chosen for the year, those of you who are new, is readiness, because I've started to realize that we get all excited about what we're doing. And sometimes it's easy to outrun our clients. And so I've started to realize that one of the, if not the most significant variable in their outcomes is what are they actually ready for? And so a lot of what we're doing in these sessions is looking at different things that help us sort of to gauge and calibrate to the readiness of our client. And I chose for today this notion of stillness in part because I'm just sort of coming out a 3-month journey through a largely mysterious illness, which left me no choice but to be still. And so it just allowed me some ways in which to explore the topic in ways I might not have otherwise if I had been busy as normal. So I'm going to put up some slides. We'll have one sort of extended breakout. There's just a few slides. I just want to introduce a few ideas. And as always, feel free to put anything in the chat box that comes up for you, a question, a thought. You're also welcome to raise your hand, and Karen will find you and give you a chance to share. And so we look at these things as being dialogue sparked by a few ideas from me, and to see kind of where they take us. So let me just get this here. It'd be helpful to start at the beginning. It's always good. So just some orientation about kind of the topic. So my question for today is, how can you help yourself and others to be still enough to recognize what you are ready for? So we have this sort of notion of readiness as like packing for a trip. Like you do everything ahead of time, and you kind of have hopefully some presence of mind, which sometimes is not easy. And then we end up arriving somewhere without a vital item. But generally, if we're still enough, we pack well and we're ready for our trip. This is actually more about how do you discern and recognize readiness on the fly? Like when you're in the moment and maybe somebody says something to you that you don't like, or you order dinner in a restaurant and you don't get the food you wanted, or a client's throwing you a baffling question and you're trying to figure out, well, I wasn't really ready for that. I wasn't expecting that. And so a lot of it is sort of discerning and developing readiness in the moment. And I'm going to suggest that the ability to still ourselves is essential to be able to do that. So there's just 4 points I want to make about that as preface to just sort of introducing our main idea for the day, which will set up our practice. So the myth of sometimes about stillness is that you only can be still if you're a monk, right? Mm-hmm. You have this sort of idea of perfection, that stillness is like not moving. And, so there's stillness and not moving are not the same at all. You can be not moving and also not still. You can be still and in motion. So it's really about this idea of presence to ourself, presence to the moment. It's not about trying to make ourselves be still. And, otherwise you end up like young children at certain ages, like you're playing hide and seek with them, turn their back to you and assume that you can't see them. And they stand still, they try really hard to stand still because they can't see you. Developmentally, they believe that you can't see them. So I want to just invite us to relax into stillness, not try to rigidify ourselves as if we're supposed to freeze. The second thing is about, for me, like I said, it's a state of being. It's a stillness in ourself. It's a stillness in our soul, our mind, our attention. It's not the absence of movement. And the easiest way to see this is to watch an elite athlete in any sport, right? They're almost always in motion of some kind, and yet their whole body is in repose almost as it's moving. And so again, my interest in the topic for today was not that we should try to ready ourselves for everything, but more that when we are moving, how do we retain a level of stillness and awareness that allows us to move with fluidity and sort of a high functioning, I suppose. And so part of this is, again, it's not, and I'll show you the graphic of this in a minute, but it's not just, I'm going to run along and then still myself and then go do something. There's a level of being able to notice what you're actually ready for. Like, so maybe you've had some difficult news, or you had a difficult encounter, or maybe you had an argument with somebody, and you're maybe after the fact trying to process, how you feel about that and what you want to do about that and how you want to respond. And so there's a stillness in that moment to be able to say, what am I ready for? Like, what is the other person ready for? And so there's a whole piece in here about stillness as a prelude to readiness, and stillness as a support for readiness. And this is probably then is the most important one to me in a way, is that when we are still, again, it allows us to drop into what we sense is the truth in the moment. So I want to just really go back to a couple of a distinction from ancient Greece. So they have a lot of make the difference between chronos and kairos. So chronos is how you measure time on your watch or on your phone, and kairos is more the elemental sense of time. And and so if you've had a really poignant moment in your life, it may have only been a mere few seconds, which is the chronos piece, but the kairos of that is it's timeless. And so if you think about like when you're very young and you had your first kiss, right? It probably didn't take all that long, but it was like eternally etched in this sort of kairos sense of the word. So when we drop into the moment, it's not because time stands still or it takes less time. The stillness enables us to grasp the kairos of that moment, the significance, the meaning, the opening of that moment in terms of what feels true for us. And so when we're working with clients in whatever we do, we're trying to gauge how still and present are they to what's actually happening? How could I support them to be more still? And how much readiness do they have available to themselves? It does not matter how big the issue is or how great your idea is or how important the lesson you want to teach is if you're, say, a teacher. It's more about what is this person ready for in this moment in time. So how much of what they sense is the truth could be available to them. And that's kind of what we're after. So I want to just give you a graphic depiction of that, and then an analogy. Then we'll give you some practice. Yes, let me just share this, and then I'll see if you have any questions before I give you the analogy. But I sort of think about this as sort of the yin and yang of readiness. So we often think of readiness, like I said, I've got my packed suitcase. It's sort of that more the yin of receptivity. It's the carrying, it's the crucible that holds whatever we're doing. And it's the readiness of like, yeah, I've got this, right? It's my ability matches this opportunity. And so we often think of readiness often as sort of an organized sort of sense of everything is here. But I'm going to offer that there's also a yang energy in readiness, which is as we're moving through something, we can drop into the moment and notice a new level of readiness. Like, what am I actually being asked to pay attention to? And so these would be those moments in life, for example, when maybe you've had an encounter with somebody or something, and you find yourself maybe feeling defeated, or you notice you're back to an old habit, like maybe you'd automatically defer, or you automatically put the other person's needs before yours. And then there's something in that moment, sort of that yang energy around readiness is like, no, that's how I normally respond. But there's something about this moment in time and what I'm remembering or what's getting activated where I'm actually ready to try a new response. And so a lot of what we're doing in our work, say if we do coaching, is creating that safety, that yin holding space. But holding space is not like a soft blanket. Like, oh, and everything lovely, and let's just hold space. There is that psychological safety of that experience. And people are not going to do as much as they might like or learn as much as they might like if they don't feel safe. But if it's all safety, then everything feels grand, but nothing happens. So you need, or if it's all yang, then it's very opening, but you don't have the safety to actually embody, integrate what's happening. So I just want to put this out there to kind of expand perhaps the notion of what readiness is. It's the readiness to receive, but it's also the readiness to be present to what's actually being asked, and how can I ready myself to engage and act on whatever is presenting itself to me. I'm going to stop there for a minute and see if you've got some thoughts or questions, or and then I want to give you a brief analogy for all this before we move into some practice together. But so again, you're welcome to put anything you'd like in the chat box, and or if you want to speak, you can do that as well.
We're practicing stillness today. It's wonderful.
I'm watching some typing faces.
Mhm. Carolyn wrote, perhaps the real stillness is being dead. Mm. Mm.
Are there other thoughts?
There is a question also from Carolyn that says, David, can you speak to where stillness is when you drop into the yin yang piece on the screen?
So in some ways, I think of these somewhat in spatial terms as horizontal and vertical. So oftentimes, part of the readiness is being, as particularly when we're receiving something, is in order for that to land in us or to be received by us, we might be aware of our own internal state, our somatic state, our mental state, our emotional state. And oftentimes when people say things or do things that we don't like, it's not because what they've said or done is that significant. It's more it landed in a dysregulated space in us, or it triggered something in us that allowed us that we could not receive it, and particularly as it was intended. So we're reacting to something that isn't really about the other person at all. It's about we don't like the state that we're in. And so there's part of it's an awareness of, you know, how am I receiving this? What can I hear? And, you know, you oftentimes after the fact go, oh man, I really overreacted to that. And I didn't really just hear what they actually said. I heard what I felt, and I paid more attention to that, which had way more to do with me. So there's a receiving piece of this, of noticing our state and what we're ready to receive. And so one of the things that I feel like aspire to is noticing, like when we say no, or when we leave something, or when we make a choice, we're trying to say, I'm not ready for that, or I'm not desiring that, or it's not the right, I'm not in the space for that, or whatever we need. The vertical one is more tricky because these are often sort of fleeting open doors in a way, that things that kind of go right by us. And so it's more that sort of in the our ID world is more that convex scaffolding, because that arrow could be pointed the other way out against us as well. It's when we bump into something and the readiness is not to receive, the readiness is to act. And our level of readiness is, what can I engage this? And so oftentimes it's, for me, more of a rising energy. It's like more in our hara, our pelvis, our feet, our hips. It's more of that kind of ready to step into something. And so it often comes in the form of a challenge. And so the two kind of go hand in hand. So if you're not sort of grounded in the yin part of this, you often don't feel resourced to respond in the yang way. And yeah, and so I just look at these two as sort of, I won't say counterbalances, but two energies that are often very useful in terms of both assessing our readiness, but actually acting on our readiness. All good, Carolyn? You've moved to the side of my screen after you're over here now. It's very shamanic of you. It's like you just like teleported yourself across my screen.
Yeah, I'm just very still and,
Yeah,
waving through.
yeah, and like if you are a fan of nature, you see the trees that learn how to bend with the wind, and the trees that do not.
And Jill referenced a wonderful, some work by John Cage on silence, indeterminacy, and chance, and the mosaic aspect of all of that.
Yeah.
Mhm. And Pamela has tied in the Kairos sense of time with the sense of space as well, which is
Yes, very much
beautiful.
so.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's, I think in our modern life, we get so busy and we're staring at screens so much that we often don't realize how not still we are. Until that's why I have a little nature preserve just literally 1 minute from my house, and I go for a walk pretty much every day just to remind myself there's a whole other pace of life than the one that exists on my screen in front of me. And it's just a nice antidote. So when I start to feel restless in my office, it's usually the sign when I need to get up out of my chair and go for a 20-minute walk through the forest. Anybody else want to share their thoughts or questions? All right, I'm gonna share an analogy from, I put myself through graduate school the first time actually doing landscaping. And my specialty, the school I was at had a lot of big older homes around it, as they often do. And a lot of these families had lived in them for a long time and their kids were gone or whatever. And so their yards were often overgrown. This is long before leaf blowers and the obsession with every yard must look like Disneyland. And so I would come out and we would just sit often in their back porch or their back deck or something. And I would have them tell me about the history of their yard, the stories that stand out for them about their yard and what they imagine they would do with the yard now. And then we would begin to just start clearing things out so that they actually had. And then we would sort of bring their vision to life.
Hola, buen día. Hello, hello.
How to help that come to life for them. And so one of the things I learned a lot about was trees. And so I just want to use this as an analogy. I'll let you just read that. So I saw this of a dear friend of mine. His wife was a well-known poet in the UK and had won a prize, a national prize for her poetry. And they used the prize money to plant, I don't know, 500 trees in an area that was close to their house to kind of replenish it. But they didn't know a lot about, actually not very much at all about this. And so they had them planted pretty quickly. And so they would just come on a big tractor and just dig holes and plop them in and cover it over. And well, when I came for a visit, they all had blown over because they were not tied into the ground. Plus, it's just a pain, especially in dirt like this, where it's lots of clay. You just have to dig too much. So if you're just too much in holding space and creating space and kind of just having everything be that way, it's very tiring. It can be very tiring, and it often doesn't give the structure and the solidity for the roots to actually take hold. Conversely, if you have too much yang and you put a young tree in, it often dies because it's very hard for new roots to break through really hard soil. And so you end up trying to do a lot of other heroic efforts trying to keep the tree alive. So there was sort of a ratio of size of hole versus size of root ball in terms of how big to dig the hole. And so I look at this as when we're thinking about readiness for ourselves, you think about if you're a coach, if you under prepare and you walk in totally blind to the client, you can still make it a good session, but it may be extra effort. And if you and if you over prepare, then you spend a lot of time you're not going to ever need. And so we're just trying to figure out this notion of creating readiness or noticing readiness in ourselves and our clients, and actually accelerating or enacting readiness when certain key moments alive. So if the container is too constrained, you often don't really get to very significant issues. If the container is too big, then the client wanders around and often may not feel able to act on anything because there was just too much that happened. And so for me, the sort of sweet spot is when we allow ourselves to be still, we can actually be guided more about what the moment is calling for. And I use this sort of ecosystem analogy because you might think, for this kind of soil and this kind of condition and this kind of tree, this might call for a bigger hole, or this might call for a smaller hole. So take the metaphor into our own practice. We're always, so then and the invitation is to be attentive to fostering the readiness in the moment. What does this moment need? And so if a client is sort of hinting at an awareness or an insight, and we don't pause, we just rush into a question, the moment is then closed down because you assume you know what it means, as opposed to letting the moment breathe to say, I wonder what this is about. If clients talk and you don't say very much, and then they sort of end up, again, feeling a bit lost and disconnected in the session, they don't have enough structure to know, enough safety to know, how do I get started? And so part of this is gauging our own readiness. Part of it's trying to gauge the client's readiness. And part of it's sort of gauging what is this system that we're in now ready for, and how can my own stillness help me to notice that more fully than otherwise. Okay. Anything new, Karen, in the chat box?
They are intensely listening to you, so no typing.
I always like
Receiving
optimists.
everything. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to be still for a second and just see if anything else wants to emerge, either as a question or as a comment, and then I'll give you a practice.
David, will we be breaking up in groups of 2 or 3, or what are your thoughts?
I'm thinking that we could do that in groups of 2.
Okay.
And I'm thinking that we could do this for, I don't know, if I give them too little, they always want more. If I give them too much, they say it's too long. I feel like we need the Goldilocks, the perfect amount of time.
It's the perfect hole,
Yeah.
the sweet spot, right?
It's one of the things actually that it would be a nice feature in Zoom. If you all in breakout rooms could signal, we're done now, we'd like to come back, or anyways. So let's give them 25 minutes. Have a nice, luxurious, seems funny to rush stillness. So
nice. And if anybody has to drop off, just go ahead and while we're in it, of course that happens, but if you are intending to do so and can't stay, just either let me know or go ahead and drop off now. You can come back if you want. You don't have to stay gone.
Yeah. All right, so let me just put up the instructions. I'm going to put all these up. So, so I'd like you to imagine you're in a coaching-like conversation. Please don't coach, but imagine it has some of those characteristics. I'm going to invite you just to one of the practices we teach a lot is about pausing, relaxing, and opening. So I'd like you just to exaggerate that a bit in this conversation, that this is not a performance. It's actually an experience, so that you're allowed to play. So you might just practice before you're going to ask a question or before you're going to respond, just to allow yourself to pause. Just maybe have a moment to relax your body, and then see what opens up to want to be said. And just practice that as part of stilling yourself as a prelude to saying anything. If you're the person who is playing sort of the role of the coach, if you will, and the person who's speaking is just speaking about something that they're attending to in the moment, something they're learning in this moment, something that they're working on in their business or their life, just something that's sort of up for them. I want your questions to be of their experience as they're telling you this, or their experience as they're reflecting on what happened, not analytical information gathering questions. So all of you that have studied narrative coaching with me would recognize this. But so the distinction would be then, rather than saying, well, how did that come to be? Or why do you think that is? Or what do you want to do about that? Just say, what are you noticing about yourself as you're telling me this story? Or what did you feel at the time that this happened? So you're creating experiences for them in the moment, so they can notice themselves, like I said, not gathering more information so you understand what they're saying. And what I'd like to do, if you're the recipient of these inquiries, I'd like you to start to ask yourself, as I'm hearing myself talk, as I'm hearing myself think or feel, as I'm hearing these questions, what am I noticing about what I'm ready for? So it could be like I'm ready to share more openly about something, or I'm realizing I'm ready actually to face something. So a yin and yang kind of possibility. So I want you to really again, move away from a performance as I've got to figure this out, or I've got to come to a conclusion, and just focus on readiness. What are you being asked to be ready for? What are you noticing that you're readying yourself for in this conversation? And then when you're done, I'd like you, the both of you, to just reflect on, leave a little bit of time at the end. If you really want to, you can always do this both directions, or you might choose just be luxurious and just stay with one direction, but to reflect on the experience and your experience of the experience. And the focus here again is around, can you pause, relax, and open to still yourself in order to be able to notice more about what you're actually ready for. And so an example might be you've been ruminating about something or pondering something, and as you talk about it with your colleague, you might notice, I think I'm ready to make a decision. I don't need to think about this anymore. Okay, so just again, focusing on pausing, stilling, and readying. Are there any questions about the assignment or the practice? Or just any random thoughts at all? All right. Are you all set, Karen?
Yes, we have some people popping off and popping back. So give me just a second. I needed to recreate that. So.
And if you need to go into any room at any point, I've got the fort here. So
okay, thank you. Let's see, and Laurel, thank you for joining us. I know you're going to have to leave. Appreciate you being here. All right, folks, we'll see you in 25 minutes. Enjoy.
I had to able to just camp about 20 places from this, put my tent up, and the sunrise. Yeah.
Oh, sounds like you're there right now.
But I'm trying to embody.
That. Let me do background challenge.
All
Right here, background challenge.
There you go,
Go
Tom.
for it.
I go for it. Tom's got a bunch of good ones as well. Hmm. All right. So I'm curious what you observed about stillness.
I can go.
Yeah, please.
And first time here, David. So thank you. This is
Welcome.
very nice. I think stillness comes and goes for me. It ebbs and flows, and I know that I perform better when I'm more still. I'm a better coach. I'm a better husband. I'm a better father. I'm a better employee. All those things. The challenge is to stay more and more in that space in the face of all the incoming stimuli and challenges which are outside of us. So that's the more I experience it, the more I want to stay there.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, I'm sure many of us in this call can relate to that challenge. What's coming up for me, Raj, not because I've mastered this by any means, but like, what if we treated stillness as a verb as opposed to a noun, even though technically it is a noun? But if it's a state of being, it's not a place we go. Yes, we can be aware of ourselves as more still or not as still. And what I've been exploring a lot, which is sort of how it became a topic for this month, was if stillness was a state of being, rather than someplace else I have to be and go to be still, I can say in this current moment, how still could I be? And again, but stillness is not the absence of motion. It's more of a state of mind, if you will, or a state of body embodiment. Yeah, there's not a magical answer there. I just am aware of one of my things in life is to turn as many things as possible into verbs. So they're less static and fixed. We tend to be less judgmental that way as well.
If I could jump in on the verb thing, I mean, I've been, thinking also about changing like nouns into verbs, and I'm thinking about like instill, like to instill something, which I don't think has the same etymological root. So it's not, so fact check me on this. But I'm thinking a lot about inspire. That's why to like put breath into something, which does have that root. But I believe stillness has etymologically is like a sense of motionless or quiet.
Yeah.
But to instill, I think etymologically has a sense of drops, like to drop into something, to put something little by little. And I know, again, they're different, but like, what would that mean if it's sort of to your question about like, what if we were to change it from thinking about it as sort of a fixed thing to a verb? And like, what would it mean to not just be still, but to sort of allow ourselves to sink into something drop by drop in the sense of to instill? I don't know, it's an interesting question.
It's reminding me, Jill, we've all had this experience of being in grocery stores and some worn out parents trying to tell this young person to be still or sit still, which is the last thing the child is capable of doing. And so it's frustrating to both of them. And, I wonder if we come up with new parenting phrases to help the child learn to still themselves as a way of being and to instill a sense of calm or peacefulness or awareness or something, as opposed to like this pointing finger and basically a demand to stop moving or stop fidgeting or stop hitting your brother or whatever that their parents wanted them to be differently.
Yeah, David, Ellen wrote in the chat that Michelle gave her permission to be still by not asking her to be still. So perfect.
Yeah. It would be rather ironic inviting somebody to be still and end up agitating them.
Yeah.
I was going to pick up on some of the things David,
Yeah.
that were just said. Vicky, may I share something that you shared with me? I'm just looking for Vicky.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that okay? All right.
Yep.
Yeah, David, you know that I have a challenge with being still, or perhaps holding silence, and I've been working on it. So I was really challenging myself to stay quiet more and hold the pause to allow Vicky to arrive in her stillness, let's say. Anyways, but what she said, and it was really interesting that I noticed near the end, I was about to ask her, so what is it that you feel now after we'd done some exchanges? And I didn't even ask the question, and she started talking about what she was feeling. So it was almost like the invitation happened through us energetically. And then she said something beautiful, which was a gift to me, because she said, in your rocking and in your movement, she said, there was a stillness. So that's just picking up on some of the things, which was that somehow I had in movement found stillness. And I just say it was a gift because that doesn't come that often. I'm still working on it, but I think it just brought home the point that someone can sense stillness in the movement. And that could be energetically felt across an ocean. So, yeah. So anyways, Vicky and I had a lovely chat. So it was great.
Great.
Can I just sort of say that
Please, Vicky.
sort of reflecting just as we were coming out of the rooms, I think I've experienced stillness as an energy. And as that energy, it then gives you an invitation. So I think that was what I took from the session that we had.
Michelle's warming up to speak.
I was just thinking about, when you see a gorgeous little bottle and inside is this essence, these little drops of stillness that come through, and just that, being able to see it, feel it, know it, move with it. But that's just, yeah. So I didn't really want to talk. I could just feel that what's inside that is absolutely beautiful. That stillness, that gorgeous stuff. Yeah.
I was thinking back to Raj, what you were sharing when I went to university at a private school in Texas. It's a long story about how I got there. But one of the most alien experiences, which taught me a lot about stillness, was the first time I went out with my friends to go dancing. They were playing this music as a kid from California I did not recognize, did not like. And there was this immediate expectation, since the vast majority of them were from Texas, that I knew how to do these dances that seemed like completely strange to me. And I was a really good athlete as long as I was running. But this thing about dancing this new dance to music I did not like was, there's women's broken toes all over Texas, I think, from a couple of evenings trying to learn how to do this. And so what I learned in hindsight, in that I tried sort of using beer as a way to learn how to, that didn't work. So I realized because you need something when you're trying to find, I was going back to what Raj was saying, when we need to find our way to stillness and what that means, I think it's in part finding what is the doorway into that. So what I focused on, and which allowed me to get out of my mind and actually surrender to this culture that was quite alien to me at first, was music. And so I started, it wasn't my way in to learn how to dance these dances as a fairly shy 20-year-old or whatever, was I love the music, and I love music, and I could hear certain instruments allow me to drop some of my angst about the whole thing and be more in the present moment. And I think a lot of it is for us, we yearn for more stillness in our life. We have kids who want things, and bosses and clients who want things, and phones that want things, and so I've just been thinking about just finding ways to cue ourselves to be able to find a way to be still and present to whatever's unfolding. I think the sooner that we can do that, the more resources and agility we have about how to be in that moment.
Yeah, appreciate that perspective,
Oh,
David. Yeah, thank you. Mhm.
yeah.
I think there's a piece of having
Pamela.
to, there's a piece of paying attention
Yeah.
to the moment that brings that, I'll call it a sense of stillness. Because to me, it's a real, I mean, it's like, for me, I can do more because I have more energy. I can problem solve quicker because I have more space to do it in.
Yeah.
And paying attention to the moment. I'm fortunate to live in a beautiful place, so I love to sit on my back porch and feel the wind on my face, or listen to the birds singing, or I pay attention to the little yard ornament that spins in the wind, or pet one of my animals and feel the texture of their fur. And that goes a long way in creating that space that seems to me to slow time down and allow you to move forward at a more leisurely pace.
Yeah. I'm thinking, Pamela, and then I'm going to go to you, Carolyn, but wouldn't it be great in some ways if, we were like people, when you went to work, you got to bring your favorite stuffed animal with you. You remember how comforting they were as children? You'd toss your family aside in a nanosecond, but you'd cling to your stuffed bear or doll for all your life, right? Because that was the thing. And I think, what if like executives just could bring their stuffed animals to work and have skip this coaching thing, just let them.
Or their blankie, or their
Yeah,
blankie.
there you go.
I have a bear I sleep with and a blue blanket.
There you go.
Mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
David, who says that execs don't bring their stuffed animals to
And
the
maybe
office?
they do. Maybe it's a secret thing. They come all chuffed up for their coaching sessions, but in reality, they're banking on their stuffed animal back in their office, right? Yeah, I think we underestimate how powerful those things are to still ourselves. Yeah, Carolyn.
Well, I'm just laughing, I think, with you, Karen, about stuffed animals that come to peer groups and masterminds. Yeah, what I was reflecting on is, what it would be like if we breathed before we did anything else, which we do anyway, of course, unconsciously, or if we were in stillness before we did anything else, as opposed to opting to notice either state being available as an antidote to life.
Yeah.
And I had a lovely time with Tommy. Thank you, Tommy. I really enjoyed our conversation. And I sort of laughed to myself as we got whizzed back into the main room, because I thought, well, wouldn't it be interesting if we thought about a coaching session that was coming up in half an hour's time as an opportunity to be very still ourselves, as a kind of resourcing of ourselves and others, as opposed to the kind of, I don't know, maybe a tightness that might come in, half an hour till I'm coaching so-and-so. But actually, if we went with the mindset that the coaching space was a space of stillness, we would be in deeper service of our clients, but also we would be very nourished ourselves.
Thinking about a call I was on, I was doing another class this morning with one of our colleagues and participants on this tension we sometimes feel between how do we hold space for others and be warm at the same time and connected to them. you know, and it feels like this notion of stillness, this sort of yin and yang of stillness is the same way. That sort of warmth and inclusion, but also this sort of presence to go do what we need to do.
And David, it speaks to something you've said before in these spaces, which is maybe we need to stop holding these spaces.
Correct.
Sort of, you know, grip like vice. I will hold this space for you.
I mean, at the end of the day, like I don't walk through my forest and say, "Oh, forest, you need me to hold this space for you, so I will." Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it goes back to there's a fine line between holding space and needing to be in control. And you know, so many of the breakthroughs our clients experience is when we're out of control or something's happened we hadn't anticipated. And most of change happens in the unknown, which we can't control at all often. So it's how do we find a way to help ourselves be ready for whatever emerges. But Tom's hiding himself and holding his hand up at the same time.
Yes, I am. I'm multitasking.
You are. Well done.
I just when Carolyn's that graphic about holding space, like that was wonderful. But I think there's for me, what came up is it's a sense of being, not a sense of doing.
Yeah.
You know, and so this is the I'm holding, that's the doing. Right. That's the doing, the gripping. I'm holding space. That's an action versus a state of being.
Mm-hmm.
So that was very helpful. Thank you, Carolyn.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in just to quickly, it's Manjeet, say that it's something I've been noticing myself lately. Like, how would I say? You feel like you're leading, holding the space, but yet really you're co-leading, holding the space, because the person you're coaching or the team you're coaching are holding the space beside you as well. But yet it's like, sometimes I do need to lead to, like, I'm not saying this very well. So there's this sort of co-holding and co-creating, but yet you're sort of dancing in and out of that leadership position almost. And it goes back, David, to what you said earlier, that if there's no one leading it at all, then it could get very hairy and unsafe too, I think. But that delicate dance and balance and where that line is, because it's ever shifting, it's challenging.
Yeah.
So there's no question here, but it's just that, it's just, it's hard. It's hard stuff.
Well, but I'm thinking, for me, most things as they go back to attachment theory for me. So you think about this, even the phrase holding space, which again, like you said, has a lot of positive attributes, you know, particularly for people that are in need, that supporting safety in this space is essential. But you think about, this, I don't know, we don't really use this phrase anymore, but it used to be called swaddling clothes, that tightly wrapped way we do with babies, because they don't have the capacity to feel safe. They need that sort of holding in really tight, especially when they're first born, to emulate sort of the womb and all that. Well, that's like the ultimate of holding space. Like you're holding all the space for them because they can't themselves. And so part of my growing discomfort with that phrase even is that, like so many of these things, after a while, it means everything and nothing, is that it assumes that the space is not fine as it is. That I have to do something to this space to make it better or different. And that's mine to do that. And so, I've just started to feel like, do we end up overusing that skill or that approach in ways that infantilize the client and even ourselves? Like I wouldn't, if I were like, so I know some of you. So if I meet up with Carolyn, I'm thinking about breakfast in Berlin, right? Oh, Carolyn, that sounds really difficult. Let me hold some space for you while you talk. No, he would never. She would throw her eggs in my face, right? And like, what is that? Go away. And so it's like this space is fine. The space is real. It's true. It's how it is. And so I'm just starting to explore, even in this conversation, do we need a new phrase? Is the stillness needing something else? And again, it's like the futility of telling the trees, I'll come here and hold space for you. They're doing fine. They don't need me to do that. And it's almost like we're holding ourselves in this space. How do we want to hold ourselves in this space? How do we want to be here in this space? And so, like, if I go back to my humbling, not learning how to text this two-step story, I couldn't figure out how to be in this space to allow myself to feel held and safe enough to actually learn how to do that. And so it's like, yeah, I just feel like getting ourselves out of the business of always feeling the need to hold space feels important somehow out of this conversation.
Well, I feel you're pointing, sorry, go on.
No, please.
Well, only just to say quickly that I feel that you're pointing to a level of projection that can go on in the unspoken way that we are with our clients, actually, which is troubling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very much
Thanks.
so. And somebody else was going to speak or was starting to.
It's Jill. I was just going to say, and
Oh.
David, this will sound familiar too, because I know we were talking about it, but so this concept of holding space, I've been thinking a lot about, and I'm writing sort of a piece on holding that I've decided I will publish next week. So stay tuned for it. Yeah, sort of a commitment to myself. But I was thinking, about holding space as sort of, sorry to get English professory again about etymology, but you hold space for someone, right? It's an indirect object. The person is the indirect object of your holding. And so, like David, when you're saying to hold space, right? Or can we hold ourselves? Like, what would that look like in I don't know, coaching space or a teaching space or like an interrelational space where you hold someone without physically holding them, but you hold them directly, right? Grammatically, directly. And what is the distinction? And I think the discomfort I'm hearing you say, David, with the space, right? It's because it is sort of addressing the space, right? As opposed to people holding themselves and holding the other person and sort of meeting them in that moment and sort of using, I don't know. So that's sort of what I'm working through. But yeah, I also have a lot of discomfort with that sense of holding something for someone else. And so.
Well, and even because the readiness or the potential in this space actually might be for them to fall apart. And that for me to hold them too tightly prevents them from falling apart, which may be the exact thing that they most need right now. And it's this feeling like somehow if we hold it strongly enough, then we can sort of manage what's going to happen. We can control the process. We can kind of stay within our comfort zones in many ways. Yeah.
I just want to say that was just hugely useful because, yeah, just hold myself. Like just that in itself is powerful, that all I need to do is hold myself.
Yeah.
And that my clients are resourceful in holding themselves. Like it's just, yeah.
Wonderful. And it goes, like I was saying before, it goes back to the second sort of attachment developmental phase of, that secure base. Can we hold ourselves long enough to go try something or be something, and then have the resource or the support or the scaffolding to pick ourselves up when we fall down? And I just continue to wonder, when we focus too much on holding space, if we're actually going back to Jill's riffing on the word hold, if we're actually holding our clients back from experiences they need to have for their own growth. And so, like, oftentimes, if we're not careful in those spaces, I observe when I'm working with training coaches, is that a client's expressing a distressing or difficult emotion or wish or judgment or whatever. There's a direction, there's an immediate desire to have compassion and remedy that and attend to that. And oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. as opposed to saying, well, that's amazing. Thank God you finally realized that. It's about time. Like, what are you going to do? You know, and being kind of more malleable in how we, because sometimes the stillness can be quite, you know, assertive in a way, and goes back to that convex scaffolding. Yeah, Carolyn.
You're just reminding me, David, with a client 2 weeks ago, that I was doing some quite heavy duty stuff was happening in the system.
Yeah.
And this client came over to me and said, I'm very triggered right now. And I said, oh, really? Okay. And I looked away a little bit and she said, yeah, I'm really triggered. I go, oh, okay. Thanks for letting me know. And after a bit, it just went into exactly what needed to happen, because she was expecting me to remove the trigger or to solve the problem or to make something different. And I was inviting her just to be with it, and it changed everything. It was fascinating.
I am meeting tomorrow with a business executive who I know has gone through some grieving, and I don't know him really well, but it was a referral and we've met in person a few times. But I was connecting this space of, I thought, my first inclination as a human being is a hugging, is giving a person a hug when they're grieving and they're going through pain. So I'm looking at this as a different perspective, David, and everyone, that can I allow the space for them to hug themselves in the moment, in the shifting of the grieving? And is that a better place for them versus, because I know he's hurting because he shared different things with me. How do I give that presence, the coaching presence and the connectivity in this space?
So I'm going to, well, I'm just going to read the slides rather than break the piece here, but it said about elders live in circular time and space more than in linear time and space. They can be still, notice what is present, and open themselves to what is being asked of them. These are all key factors we can develop to increase our readiness to learn and grow. So my thought about your question, Ellen, is part of our discernment around stillness is stilling ourselves to get a sense for what does this person need most right now. It could be to be comforted. It could be to be listened to. It could be to let them feel alone, to not comfort them at all. To say, yes, this person is not here anymore. And be with that, because they're going to have that experience anyways on their own on their journey. So part of our accompaniment is, can I help them learn when they're confronted with the existential reality that this person is gone, or this relationship is gone, or a job is gone? They're going to have moments often in the middle of the night where they're confronted by the reality of that. Can I be with them to help them learn how to be with themselves when those moments come? If I try to protect them from those moments in the safety of coaching, then they're less prepared to do this on their own.
But so if I can, understand it further, is it providing a soothing from a coaching space that allows the soothing to happen versus solving?
It could be. I mean, so you think about, children when they're born don't have the neurological capacity to self-soothe. That's why we have to soothe for them. And so there's times when we're, any of us who have been through big griefs or big losses or big whatever, it's comforting to be soothed by others because we can't muster that often on our own, especially in the beginning. So to have others help us regulate and is helpful. And after a while, if we're always doing that, they're not going to learn how to do that for themselves. And so part of it's just helping our clients to normalize their experience, that it's often all part of the process, to notice what are they ready for. So maybe this person doesn't like being helped. I'm going to be brave. I'm going to soldier through this. I've got this, right? And so the readiness for them is not there to receive. So maybe your work with them is helping them to learn how to receive and practicing that with you. Maybe somebody, all they do is receive and take. And your task for them might be to invite them, what would it take for this person to become ready to chart their own course, to do this for themselves? And so it's always, for me, it's often this whole thing about readiness is it's a moving target, if you will. But it's always for us, what in this moment in time or this phase of a coaching conversation, for example, what do they seem to be ready for next or ready for now? And what does that mean for me in terms of what role I might play for them? And so to Carolyn's point, somebody's getting frustrated because Carolyn's not magically answering in the way that she was subconsciously demanding that you meet her there and fix this for her. And so her readiness might be a readiness to learn how to ask for what she wants, as opposed to just putting out comments and hoping people know what they mean. So I'm conscious of the time, and I just want to, if you got any parting thoughts, I'll put this up first, just 1 second. But there's if you have any thoughts more on this, you can always go to the, Karen, can you just scrape the URL and put it in the chat box so people
Sure.
can have it? But it's just a shortened version of the page on our BCE forum on our platform. And if you have any reflections, comments, questions, things you try differently after this, you always can put them there. It's a great way to stay connected. Other than that, I want to say thanks for coming to join us. Stop sharing screen so we can see.
And I just want to invite you, there's some really beautiful comments in the chat that were very active during this. And if you all would like to save it, you feel free to click on those 3 dots and save it if you want immediate access to that. It would be really nice.
Yeah. All right. Well, we do these every month, so hopefully you'll come back sometime between now and next week. Karen and I will put our heads together and see what where the winds are blowing and what topic we might want to look at next time about readiness. So thank you for joining us and have a wonderful rest of your day.